So there has been some just incredible interviews that Nancy Pelosi has been giving, just sort of casually savaging Joe Biden and his political team in particular. She just put out a book, I think The Art of Power is what it's called. Is that what it's called? Something
yes,
like
that's
that.
Right.
The Art of Power.
Available at Costco, by the way.
Which
recently saw it.
We put in a request for her to come on, by the way.
Yeah,
We would
we'll
love.
see.
Yeah, I don't see it really happening, but it would be interesting. Anyway, so she's been doing a lot of interviews in the context of this book that's coming out. And she has just been sort of, spilling the tea on what went on behind the scenes during the pressure campaign. Let's take a look at this first one and what she reveals.
I didn't accept the letter as anything but a letter. I mean, there are some people who were unhappy with the letter. Let me say, some said that some people were unhappy with the letter. I'll put it in somebody else's mouth because it was I don't even know, it didn't sound like Joe Biden to me. It really didn't. But
please tell us what you told President Biden to persuade him to step aside.
Well, I've never shared any conversations with the President of the United States publicly, no.
It's said that he's furious at you. Is he?
Well, he knows that I love him very much.
I understand that you don't want to own this, but it is so well reported that you were the leader of a pressure campaign.
No, I wasn't a leader of any pressure party. Well, let me say things that I didn't do. I didn't call one person. I did not call one person. I love him so much. I think he's been really a fantastic president of the United States. So I really wanted him to make a decision of a better campaign because they were not facing the fact of what was happening. Just a little background.
It was like
I've
you
never
felt his
been
pain.
that impressed with his political operation.
Biden's operation.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I just haven't been. They won the White House. Bravo. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But so my concern was this ain't happening. And we have to make a decision for this to happen. And the president has to make the decision for that to happen. Let me just say, I won't say necessarily I knew what I was doing at that time. I knew what I was doing in the whole thing, not just that show.
And what was that?
That Donald Trump would never set foot in the White House again.
So a lot that's interesting there.
There's a lot going on there.
First of all, she talks about the letter. Remember the letter that Biden put out and his team saying like, I am in the race, period of end of story, and this conversation needs to stop. And then she goes on Morning Joe and says, well, we're waiting for him to decide.
Yes.
And they're like, no, he said he decided. Well, we're waiting for him to decide. So she says, I just saw it as a letter and that didn't really sound like him to me. Then she has this very mob boss-like type language, plausible deniability when she's getting pressed on, okay, what did you do? What did you say to him? And she says, well, I can always say, I didn't call one person. I was not the leader of Pressure Party. I did not call even one person. And then in the second interview with the New Yorker, she says, to tell you the truth, I've never been that impressed with his political campaign. He won the White House, bravo. But he wasn't grappling with reality that he was losing. He was not presenting any sort of a plan or ability to turn it around and was in complete denial. Remember the reports from the time that she was like, get Donald on the phone because he's not giving the straight truth about what these numbers are. He was in denial, just like Trump is now, about where his poll numbers actually were and what was required to turn it around. So very, very interesting comments from her.
It's absolutely fascinating, and it does just tell us about what that pressure campaign looked like. We also, by the way, Biden has now done more interviews than Kamala Harris since he has dropped out of the race. He sat down with CBS News, and he talked about his decision to drop out. Here's what he had to say.
Let's begin with your decision. You're at your home, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, late July with your family, and you make this historic decision. Tell me the story.
Look, the polls we had showed that it was a neck-and-neck race. Would have been down to the wire. But what happened was a number of my Democratic colleagues in the House and Senate thought that I was going to hurt them in the races. And I was concerned if I stayed in the race, that would be the topic. You'd be interviewing me about why did Nancy Pelosi say, why did someone, and And I thought it'd be a real distraction, number one. Number two, when I ran the first time, I thought of myself as being a transition president. I can't even say how old I am. It's hard for me to get out of my mouth. And, but things got moving so quickly, it didn't happen. And the combination was that I thought it was a critical issue for me, still is not a joke, maintaining this democracy. But I thought it was important because although it's a great honor being president, I think I have an obligation to the country to do the most important thing we can do, and that is we must defeat Trump.
So what do we see from that? Now he claims he was a transition president, even though he denied being that transition president a mere month ago, whenever he was still trying to remain in the race.
Yeah.
Now it's all about, oh, it would have been a distraction. Well, it was a distraction whenever you're still clinging to power. What ultimately forced him out was not, I think it was obviously Pelosi, it was the donors, and it was everybody just saying, not only you have no path to victory, you will have no money to pursue it. So he held on to his very last gasp. And let's not forget, he still continues to cling to the American presidency. We have two segments we're about to get to where the U.S. is greenlighting a literal invasion of Russia and where Iran is poised to begin a possible regional and maybe even global war with U.S. military assets that are streaming there. He has his finger on the button and the nuclear codes. It remains an enduring and terrifying position.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think reading into what he said there a little bit, he says, oh, well, the media wasn't going to stop. And you would be asking me right now, what about what Nancy Pelosi said and other leaders? She and others really credibly threatened that if he didn't, remember the quote, you could do this the easy way or the hard way.
Right.
She very credibly threatened that basically, we're not going away. We're not letting it drop. Every day until you go is going to be you having to deal with Pelosi came out against you, Schumer came out against you, Hakeem Jeffries came out against you, Barack Obama came out against you, ratcheting up the pressure up until he was going to go. So, he came to the conclusion at long last that this was not a sustainable position for him. And, Pelosi's comments, though, about his being unimpressed with his political team, which, by the way, I think is incredibly fair, given they had way too much self-confidence and arrogance about their political prowess. When the 2020 primary, he didn't win. He had that handed to him. And then in 2020, in the general election, you're running against Trump, who was doing all kinds of wild stuff and shooting himself in the foot every single day. And you barely eked down a victory, even in what should have been really favorable circumstances. So I think Pelosi is actually right about that. But it clearly annoyed those who were on Biden's political team. We had a long interview with Anita Dunn, who was one of those individuals in Politico, and she made a little passive-aggressive undercutting comment of Nancy Pelosi. She said, we can put this up on the screen, this is C3. She said, the task in front of us, this is Anita Dunn, is to win this election, not let Donald Trump become president again, and to win the House of Representatives, which had certain leaders in 2022 done a slightly better job, maybe we would control today, but we don't. Clearly a shot at Nancy Pelosi there. So that's how people in D.C. return fire is through bitchy passive-aggressive
I was going to
comments.
say, there's no other way to describe this entire interview as just literally bitchy, where she's like, well, certain leaders and people, denied us the ability to get back, and that just really kneecapped. And I mean, this woman, too, is a liar. She, up until the day before Biden dropped out, was saying that they still had a path to victory. Everything was fine.
She's still claiming that.
Yeah, in here, she says that if you look at the polls, and what was it, the poll dials, she says.
Oh, and the debate.
Actually,
people liked the second half of the debate.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. He was actually worse, which is weird, considering how terrible it was in the beginning. His very first answer was a national humiliation, and it was just a downswing from there. You don't need a dial to tell you that. And if you do have a dial that tells you otherwise, you should fire your dial provider.
Yeah, no, she was part of the team that was blowing smoke up his ass and everyone else's, and lying and denying the reality of his current state. Lying, I think, to him, but he's a grown man. He knows how to read a poll. But giving him only the data that painted the rosiest picture. And so, that's when Pelosi comes in and is like, all right, well, let me talk to Donilyn, who is a top Biden aide as well, about what's going on. That's when the rubber hit the road of, we're going to break open this bubble that you're living in, this alternate reality in which you're doing well and in which you're winning. So, I did see a report, this will be something to keep an eye on, that On the one hand, Kamala Harris is not good historically at building a political team. So the fact that she could just, turn on the lights in the Biden campaign, switch over the signs and roll out and be good to go is overall, I think, a tremendous advantage for her. However, there is an awkwardness between the people like Anita Dunn, who is now on the Harris team, who were Biden people up until the very bitter end, and now the new people who have been brought in, like a David Plouffe, who also has a very senior role and who is, part of Obama world. Now, Obama world seen as very adversarial to the Biden world. So there is apparently some internal campaign tension that they are working through right now. And all of these campaigns are turf wars. People are very jealous and protective over what is their sphere of influence and what is their level of power. And that's the way all of DC operates. So you can only imagine when you had this campaign structure set up for President Biden with certain advisors who have been close to him for a million years and who thought that they were locked in their spot of power. And then, suddenly you got David Plouffe breathing down your neck and telling you what to do, and others like him as well. You can imagine how that would breed some tension and resentment. As of yet, it doesn't manifest in terms of the performance. I think anyone would have to say, just judging by the numbers and the look of the campaign and what they've been able to pull together, et cetera, that just from a pure political perspective, they've done a very effective job. But that's something that is sort of brewing under the surface that could come out later as a source of problems for them.
I totally agree with that. And look, I think that the book, right now everyone's disciplined and they're keeping it, enthusiasm and all that. The 2025 book on how this all came to be, I cannot wait. Mark Halperin, he'll make his grand return. He is the one who originally,
think so?
He got the scoop, remember? He was the one who had the exact timeline for how it was all gonna go down.
Was he right about that stuff?
He was totally correct about the timeline for dropout and all of that. And
Pelosi says she's gonna write a book about it, so. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I'll have to buy
road.
it. Look, I am a sucker for those inside stories for how it all came about. And I do think it was particularly insane. And if anything, no Biden book has sold well. The only one that will sell is about how we finally got him to go away forever. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.